afraid of you, Colonel Macgregor. Why are they so hesitant to listen? What are you saying that's so controversial about the Ukraine-Russia situation?
Well, I guess to understand that, you have to, first of all, understand who the people are and why they are driving this confrontation in Ukraine.
Perfect. War.
Yeah. Well, it's a strange set of circumstances. Obviously, the last thing I think the United States needs at this point in its history is a major war with another major power.
Amen.
So that's a fairly straightforward position. And I have supported the idea of neutrality for Ukraine, certainly since 2014. I always thought that the Ukrainian construct as a nation state was ahistorical because it included too many people who were not Ukrainian, first of all. They were never really asked whether or not they wanted to live inside this thing called Ukraine. And I suggested, well, we should have a plebiscite. And ever since 2014, I've been under attack by members of both parties, by what we call, and I think you used the term as well, the uniparty swamp, that just regards me as an enormous problem because I don't subscribe to the view that we should shove this nation-state construct down everybody's throats, that there should be room for people to vote, decide what they want, what they don't want. And ultimately, we've lost that battle fairly early. The Republicans, as well as Democrats in the Senate, wanted nothing to do with it. Mm-hmm. They seem to have decided to make war on Russia, whether that war is economic or cultural or otherwise. And I think to some extent we have to say that Russia to them represents the last major European state that is not part of the globalist, internationalist empire, if you will. They've resisted LGBTQ. They've resisted what I would call this interesting blend of nihilism, Marxism, atheism. And as a result, they have to be subverted and overthrown.
I know how controversial everything that you just said appears to sound to those who have been, I should say, brainwashed by the narrative. And what's shocking to me, and I've been watching the news for 27 years in the media and my whole life before that, if I turn that television on and I watch Fox News, I may as well be listening to MSNBC, CNN, NPR. They're all repeating the same exact talking points. There's no differential. No one is allowed to say, wait a minute, maybe just because Putin is bad, that's if he's bad, and anyone looking at the war footage who's not affected by the old people, the children being dragged through mud for safety, is not fully human. We all feel the sympathy for these people. But it's not as simple in my mind as Putin is evil and therefore Zelensky is Churchill. He is the last thing from being Churchill. I could not believe that this vulgar nightclub comedian, which is all he's ever been to me, put into power in 2019 with complete lies of what he would do, which he hasn't done, would be invited to speak to the British Parliament. They give him a standing ovation when he repeated the same thing that Churchill said, we'll fight in the land, we'll fight in the sea, we'll fight in the streets. It was outrageous to listen to that. And you as a historian and a military analyst could probably better articulate how Ukraine is not the UK facing Hitler. Would you care to comment on that for a moment? Because you would know more about that. I mean, I know intuitively Britain or England facing Nazi Germany is not comparable in any way to Ukraine facing Russia right now, correct?
No, absolutely not. And I think it's a tragedy that we have so many people trying to refight the Second World War. The Second World War was a terrible tragedy, particularly in the East. Millions and millions and millions of lives were lost pointlessly in this Nazi-Soviet war, dredging these sort of mythological beasts back up from the grave on all sides is a catastrophe. That's the last thing we should want. There's never been a willingness just to look objectively at what is in the interest of the people who live inside this thing called Ukraine. Is it really in their interest to join a bloc like the NATO alliance that is unambiguously and incurably hostile to Russia? I don't think it is. But then again, my view from the beginning of this whole business, when I was my last tour with the NATO alliance at the Supreme Headquarters of Allied Powers Europe, was that we should be telling people in Eastern Europe, and for that matter, everywhere in the world, before you turn to us and try to drag us into the war that you think you want to fight with your neighbor, we really think you ought to talk to your neighbor and find a way to get along first. No one seems to be interested in doing that.